What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tomatoito Boxing Show. And wow, what an impressive, what an entertaining card the 5v5 was. I'm really curious to see how you guys saw it, how you guys enjoyed it, how you guys watched it, how you guys took in the experience. It was really neat in the sense of the format, right? Pinning one promoter and his five fighters, or five of the fighters that he picked, are deemed to be the best, and the divisions that they came in agreement to, and pinning them against another promoter's five fighters whom they deemed were the best to represent their stable for those selected weight divisions. It was a cool format. It was a really neat format, something new, something innovative, something that boxing definitely needed. And brought to you by Saudi Money, by Turki Al Sheikh, who's been throwing boatloads of money at the sport of boxing and has delivered. It hasn't been a sham per se as to a big money grab by pay-per-views or putting just one big fight and the rest are just fill-in fights. Think about it. This was 6 great fights with a lot of top-tier opponents that we have, a lot of top-tier boxers that are in their prime at the moment, to say the least. Some that are in their crossroads, some that are near retirement, but they've all been at some point in their career, in their respective careers, either at the top echelon of their respective divisions or continue to be, or climbing up. I mean, we got the variable there of a Deontay Wilder versus that of a Nick Ball or a Willie Hutchinson. All these names whom took part in that card yesterday. So really neat. And so obviously it plays with your imagination to see that now that there's a winning promoter that emerged victorious in a clean sweep fashion, such as Frank Warren did yesterday. It really plays games with your imagination of the what ifs. What if Queensberry goes against Bob Arum's Top Rank? And Bob Arum, who's in the back end of his days, he's already the older statesman, the older promoter, the longest to be around. Well, I guess Don King's also still around. Bob Arum is just a legendary promoter, regardless of what you think of him. Imagine what Top Rank and Queensberry would be like, picking 5 versus 5. Imagine stateside if they do a Golden Boy versus Top Rank, or even DBE, Lou DiBella, or Salida Promotions against Lou DiBella, who have maybe lesser known fighters. But from time to time, I mean, think about it. Lou DiBella has George Kambosos. Salida has promoted Clarissa Shields in the past. Lou DiBella has been involved with, say, the likes of Sergio Martinez in the past. Samson Lakowicz. PBC. Imagine if we had like a Golden Boy against PBC. Or what have you, you know? Eddie Hearn against Golden Boy, since they've been going back and forth at each other's necks. So it's cool that it opens up a whole new landscape for the sport of boxing in an innovative format. And that's what I was so appreciative about it. And all the fights were really entertaining. I mean, we're watching these guys that are looking to either get into the top ranks or the top tier of their respective divisions or maintain their status. And it was so cool to see from the very, very first fight. Also, we got to see Dimitri Bivol, whom the entire event was built around. Dimitri Bivol was one half of the reason why this whole event got put together in the first place. This was going to be the supporting cast. The 5v5 was going to be the supporting cast to the mega fight, the mega unification fight for the undisputed title and throne of 175 pounds between Dimitri Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. Beterbiev gets injured, meniscus tear, undergoes surgery, obviously had to pull out of the fight. Dimitri Bivol refused to sit around and wait. until that fight gets rescheduled and announced and negotiated. So he decided to stay active after he came back from a long 13-month layoff, came back in December on the Day of Reckoning against Lyndon Arthur, came out successful, picked up the IBO title in doing so from Lyndon Arthur, and stepped into the ring yesterday with the WBA and IBO titles, putting them on the line against Malik Zinad, who was the opponent selected by the WBA, also a highly ranked opponent by the IBF, who was basically lining him up to challenge either Better BF or if the title would become vacant at some point. Well, the WBA decided that Malik Zinad was also good enough for them to challenge the champ and enter Malik Zinad with a similar record to that of Dimitri Bivol. And this is where we always talk on the show about the difference in levels of opposition, the difference in resume. You have Malik Zinad, who had a higher knockout ratio than Dimitri Bivol, and the exact same identical winning record as Dimitri Bivol, undefeated himself. Both fighters, Bivol and Zinad, came into the ring at 22-0. Zinad with 16 knockouts, if I recall correctly, to his credit, whereas Bivol had 11 knockouts, to his credit. This is what we talk about levels. There's levels to this game, and a lot of it has to do with the opposition that you faced. A lot of it has to do with how exposed you are to the sport of boxing versus fighting continuous quote-unquote taxi cab drivers or quote-unquote tomato cans, as those terms have been come to be known or utilized in describing lesser level opposition, easy opposition, tune-up fights, what have you. So that's the curiosity, right? I've argued a lot with a lot of people that I know, or several people that I know. We've argued this before, where they tell me that I'm super focused and I put a huge emphasis on resumes versus people just look at the fighting style of each respective fighter and they're like, that's the guy that's going to win. Well, Malik Zinad has somewhat of a fan-friendly style fight, a European type style where he fights in spurts. He's long. He had a long reach. Not the best footwork. Not too fast. Doesn't cut the ring very well. But does utilize his height. Fights tall. Utilizes his height. Utilizes his reach. And unleashes whenever he finds the openings. The style was there to be interrupted by a more aggressive Dimitri Bivol. And this is exactly what we witnessed yesterday. So when you look at the fighters, you're like, well, if he just fights tall and keeps Bivol at range, keeps him at a distance, he's going to pick Bivol apart. Except Bivol doesn't fight like that. Bivol fights tall himself, even though he was the shorter of the two fighters, but he likes to invade people's space. He has very good defense with very quick footwork, very quick hands, and he's able to get in on the inside. So when he gets into the pocket of the opposing fighter, what are they going to do when they're a one-trick pony? This is what Bivol did. He got in, he invaded the space of Zinad, time and again, dropped him from the very opening round of the fight, and established dominance. That's the levels in opposition right there. Drops him with a left hook in the first round, and from there, just continue to pile it on to let him know who was the more dominant fighter. Continue to get in, and it's almost as if the fight lasted a little bit longer than it should have, because Bivol had some opportunities, but continued to marinate, continue to wear Zinad down to the point where when the final onslaught came, in round 6, he didn't let off. He was very smart, very calculated, Bivol was. And to us as the fans, yes, we saw several times prior than the 6th round where Bivol could have taken him out, but he's very smart, very calculated in that sense where he knew exactly when to go for the kill and executed. Stepped on the gas, did not let off, did not let Zinad off the hook, and took him out of there. There was a funny comment that I saw on X yesterday where somebody posted, Zinad owes half of his purse to the referee who saved his life, because Bivol was not going to stop. Didn't even see the ref coming from behind him to be able to wave the fight off. He was not going to stop. He was just unleashing on Zinad by the time that he dragged him over to that corner, and he was not going to let off if it wasn't for the ref. The fight ends at the 2-minute and 6-second mark of the 6th round. Dimitri Bivol retains his WBA and IBO title, remains active, looks good, remains fresh, didn't take much damage, and now he awaits. Now, not only does he get his mandatory out of the way, now he awaits Artur Beterbiev and the big undisputed showdown that hopefully gets announced for sometime later this year. Dimitri Bivol improves to 23-0, and with this stoppage, he had gone 9 fights winning by decision. His last knockout win came against Sullivan Barrera in 2018, in March of 2018. That's when Dimitri Bivol was starting to make a name for himself. That was his biggest fight at that point in his career. And at that time, when he stopped Sullivan Barrera, he had 4 stoppage wins leading into that knockout win over Sullivan Barrera. That was his 5th stoppage win after he conquered Barrera. From there, he won 9 fights, including that of Lyndon Arthur in December, including Zurdo Ramirez, Saul Canelo Alvarez, including Craig Richards, who was also part of that card yesterday, Joe Smith Jr., Jean Pascal. All these were unanimous decision wins. Until Malik Zinad came and got him back into the knockout column. 23-0, he gets the 12th knockout of his career, hands Zinad the first loss of his resume, and Dimitri Bivol now gets to enjoy his victory and sit and wait for the announcement and hope that it does come to fruition, the big undisputed showdown against Artur Beterbiev. A performance like this, like such as the one that Dimitri Bivol put on yesterday, makes you wonder, and now definitely has to shift the betting odds a lot, because it was a heavy favored Artur Beterbiev leading into this weekend, especially because Beterbiev has a 100% knockout ratio. So it's easy for people to say Beterbiev was going to win by knockout. This has to shake all that up. The fact that one fighter's getting older, one fighter has been experiencing numerous illnesses and injuries and delays in the last few years, and Beterbiev slowing down, whereas Bivol's at the best moment in his career at the moment, and active and injury-free and not taking much damage in his fights, regardless of the style that he fights or that he faces against. It's got to shake up the betting odds, hands down. And then let's talk about the 5v5. Because we look at the preview episode, and in the preview episode, let's start with Willie Hutchinson, Craig Richards, where I was thinking the intrigue behind this fight, not thinking, but the way that we broke it down in the preview episode, and it was an over an hour episode, over an hour long that we did. A hell of an episode, and so in tune with this because I was so hyped and so excited about this, and I'm still excited. I like the way that these fights played out, and a lot of them were hard for me to pick. So you have to go based on body of work, at least for me. I'm very big into body of work and resume. So we look at Willie Hutchinson, the most decorated Scottish fighter of recent times, a very good pedigree, boxing pedigree on his behalf, very good boxing style, but the level of opposition that he had faced up to this moment, this was definitely going to be one of the tougher opponents for him in Craig Richards, who did not possess and does not have a decorated amateur past. very limited amateur experience. Most of his experience has come trial by fire, stepping into the ring against big names, such as Dimitri Bivol, whom he took all the way to a decision. With tight scorecards on that fight, Craig Richards against Bivol. He poses threats. He has a style that complicates the fight and tends to complicate the fights for his opponents. He's rugged. He's not the most fluid. Could definitely complicate a fight for anybody who's a traditional boxer, traditional fighter. So the professional ranks, in my opinion, was going to be that Craig Richards was going to muddy the water, and should he be able to muddy the waters for Willie Hutchinson and make it a rough and tumble type fight, he was going to prevail over Willie Hutchinson, giving him the first real test of his professional career. The intrigue was that. What were we going to see, and how good is Willie Hutchinson adjusting to the pro ranks? And what we saw was a Willie Hutchinson with a full tank of gas who just came out and unleashed on Craig Richards. Just left it all out there. This was a fight for him to conquer, punches in bunches to say the very least. Very, very impressed by Willie Hutchinson, in the sense that we didn't see the most strategic, the most tactical, the cleanest of boxing matches, but we saw heart versus heart versus experience. In the end, Willie Hutchinson levels up, not just in ring IQ, but he levels up as a professional within the light heavyweights, because he just proved that he's able to adjust on the fly and that he's able to execute a game plan to near perfection. This is what they had in mind. Get into the ring, outwork the old dog, get the fresh legs against the experienced legs, and just go, quote unquote, balls to the wall. Willie Hutchinson did just that. He established a rhythm, and you had, by the later rounds, you had a gassed, worn out, diminished version of Craig Richards, who was just happy to reach the end line, to reach the end point of the fight. If this would have been a 15-round fight, he would have dropped. He was gassed, he was gasping for air, he was worn out, because it was just the young man, Willie Hutchinson, just too much, too active for him. He comes away with the win, hands Craig Richards another defeat. Just a steady barrage of an attack that Willie Hutchinson put on. The scorecards: 117, 111, 116, 112, 119, 109, which is a little bit crazy. But basically, they're all saying we didn't see Craig Richards really have much of a chance in this fight. Willie Hutchinson stepped on the gas and did not let off until the final bell. Very interesting approach, very interesting fighting style. And for Craig Richards, an eye-opener. He thought he was going to be able to establish this, make it a dirtier fight, make it a tough fight, a rugged fight. He did not expect that this guy was just going to be Roadrunner on Wile E. Coyote. So Willie Hutchinson prevails and continues in his winning ways since his lone defeat, which is a stoppage loss that he suffered several years back. Stoppage in the 5th round to Lennox Clark back in 2021. We move on to Ray Ford, who had that heroic, amazing performance, championship-winning performance against Kolmatov back in December, who announced himself as the newest 126-pound champion back then. And you have a Nick Ball who was, and this was the first defense for Ray Ford, putting the first time that he was defending his WBA title. And a Nick Ball who came off of a controversial decision draw against arguably the most experienced of the 126-pound champions in Ray Vargas. Many felt that Nick Ball deserved to have won that fight and he should have been crowned the WBC champ earlier this year. This is the second title shot in a row. He was not going to let this one get away from him and nearly did. I still feel that Ray Ford had done enough to have retained his title, but it was such a tightly contested fight with power punches by both. Just bomb after bomb after bomb that got thrown from both parties. Beautiful combinations from Nick Ball. Great combinations with some stopping power from Ray Ford that would definitely stumble and shift the stance of Nick Ball whenever Ray Ford would get off. But it was a you pick 'em type fight, and it was a scoring nightmare for the judges. Such a tight fight where when it ended, I felt like, dang, Nick Ball's about to have another draw. And he's going to not get a title by way of another draw because it was that tight of a fight. I, on the other hand, had Ray Ford pulling this fight out similar to what one of the judges had, 115-113. I felt that Ray Ford should have retained his title. But I'm not discontent with Nick Ball becoming the newest featherweight champion. The pint-sized wrecking machine that is Nick Ball is just going to pose headaches for anybody. He just did it against Ray Vargas, and he just did it to Ray Ford. Ray Ford congratulated him at the end and announced that he's going to leave the 126-pound division and take his talents over to the 130-pound division, the super featherweights, or the junior lightweights. Ray Ford lost his title, unable to defend it a single time. But what a valiant effort and what a hell of a fight. I'm a big fan of Ray Ford, and maybe I was being biased. I don't know. I thought it was a really tight fight, and if it would have been a draw, it would have sucked for Nick Ball, but it was that kind of fight. It was a scoring nightmare where I had Ray Ford up 115-113 in the end. The scores in the end were 115-113 for Nick Ball. Two of them, 115-113 for Nick Ball. One judge had the same score, 115-113 for Ray Ford. I basically was on par with that second judge, with Byung-Moo Kim, who scored it 115-113 for Ray Ford. That's how I saw it, which is okay. I'm not unhappy that Nick Ball got it. It was that type of a performance, very deserving. And if they saw that he was the victor, you could definitely make the case for why he became the champion yesterday. What a hell of a fight by both fighters, but what a hell of an effort by Nick Ball. He could take a punch, he's got a hell of a chin, and he could deliver a hell of a punch as well. A fight where on the preview episode, we thought that it was going to be too much for Nick Ball, that if he continued to lunge forward with a sniper type right hand that Ray Ford has and the hooks that he's able to put together to initiate his combos, Ray Ford would be able to pick him apart on the way in. What translated was that Ray Ford was unable to time Nick Ball. He was unable to time him every single time, and it was just too much all the time, similar to what we were just talking about Hutchinson. Nick Ball is just too much. The wave was an ongoing wave where it just didn't stop beating and going forward and unleashing punches from different angles, mixing his attack very well. Ray Ford, the more calculated of the two, trying to establish a rhythm, trying to establish a style and stop him and hurt him with his combinations and his punches, trying to stop him in his tracks so he could continue his assault, was so interrupted by the ongoing onslaught of Nick Ball, and it threw off Ray Ford's style and it threw off his game plan. You got to give it to Ball and the type of style that he possesses, which is just swarming. It is overwhelming. And he's got power. So he is your newest featherweight champion. Joins the likes of Venado, Ray Vargas, and Divino Lopez. Divino, Vargas, Venado, and Ray Ford relinquishes his title against the pint-sized wrecking machine and Nick Ball. We move on to the Queensberry captain, Hamza Sheeraz against Austin Williams. Another super entertaining fight, another great fight that by the end of this fight, there was a name that popped into my head where for a future opponent or potential opponent for Hamza Sheeraz. The type of fight that this was, we knew that it was going to be a height, and we knew that it was going to be a matter of footwork for Ammo Williams to be able to make this a confusing fight and catch Hamza Sheeraz from different angles. His speed, his footwork, his creativity would pose problems for Sheeraz, whereas Sheeraz was the taller fighter, lankier fighter, long reach, very consistent, who was going to just try to walk down Ammo Williams. This is basically what happened. Ammo Williams got creative. Ammo Williams tried to attack from different angles, try to approach this fight and get as creative as he could, but he would continuously get caught. Hamza Sheeraz had the power, definitely favoring him over that of Ammo Williams. Ammo Williams has that flash type power where Hamza Sheeraz has that deteriorating power. When he hits, he lets you feel it, and the opponents feel it, and they start stepping back. Hamza Sheeraz ends up coming away with the stoppage win over Ammo Williams, something that I did not see happening to Ammo. I did not see Ammo Williams being stopped. I really thought if anybody was going to be stopped, that it was going to be Hamza Sheeraz being caught by something unorthodox. But Sheeraz is the silver middleweight WBC champ, and just basically not just a captain for Queensberry, not just a great prospect and potential title contender, but he's a serious threat for the middleweight division. And with a performance like this against an undefeated Ammo Williams, who was on the up and up in his career, Sheeraz just sent a loud and clear message to the entire middleweight division, and he definitely has the style and the power to be able to contend against Janibek, against Carlos Adames. And the name that popped in my head when this fight was going on, which is someone that I had mentioned in the past in prior episodes when I've covered Ammo Williams, was that of Arizona native Elijah Garcia, who I thought Elijah Garcia and Ammo Williams would possess a great fight if they were ever to step into the ring against one another. And that's the name that popped in my head. I'm like, I would love to see what Garcia could do against Hamza Sheeraz, because he is very creative, but he has a lot of power as well. And he has a very similar style to that of Sheeraz, where they come forward, walk their opponents down, and accumulation of damage is what they rely on. Hamza Sheeraz stops Ammo Williams in the 11th round. Referee gets in and saves Ammo Williams for incurring any further damage, as he was just out on his feet, on survival mode and out on his feet. Gets the first defeat of his career, moves to 16-1. Hamza Sheeraz gets the 20th victory of his otherwise unblemished record. Daniel Dubois stops Filip Hrgovic. Who would have seen that happening? Daniel Dubois, the boxing, facing the demon of the once prior sparring partner from years ago who used to dominate him and ragdoll him, according to reports out there. Hrgovic he had that confidence coming into this fight where he felt that he was just going to be a better man than Daniel Dubois. Well, years removed, Dubois is like, I want that challenge. This is what I want to prove. I'm not that same person that used to spar against you. Bring it on. And sure enough, he answered the call. He answered the demons. He did so against Gerald Miller in December, and here he is again doing so. The only drawback that I had was going to be the mental, where Filip Hrgovic punches hard, and he did so. He did have a lot of success against Daniel Dubois, but very slow. We knew that speed was going to be and output was going to be the big issues for Filip Hrgovic, where the power often bails him out and has done so in his entire career. Hrgovic possesses that type of power. Well, he landed a lot of heavy leather on Daniel Dubois, but the boxing ability of Dubois is what bailed him out, what kept him consistent, and what in the end ended up stopping Hrgovic. He cuts him on both eyes. The fight gets stopped by the doctor because of the cuts. The cuts were so nasty that they were cross brow leaning into the top of his eyelid on his right eye, and the left brow was starting to be cut as well, and the left eye damaged as well. So the doctor steps up to the apron, waves the fight off, instructs the referee that he could not continue, and the referee waves the fight off, saving Filip Hrgovic from further damage. And Daniel Dubois lands an 8-round TKO. The boxing ability of Daniel Dubois and the consistency, his pedigree, is what got him through this fight. And the mental was the only negative that I saw that could have potentially affected Daniel Dubois. That when he started getting hit by the heavy-handed Hrgovic, how was he going to answer that call when damage began to incur? Why? He took the knee when his orbital bone was damaged in his younger years as a professional against Joe Joyce. That could have potentially been a huge derailment for his career. He answered a call, got back to his winning ways. Then the body shot that he lands on Usyk, where everybody thought that he had won, including himself. However that happened and it was handled, Usyk ends up being allowed to rest, take over 5 minutes, and get back into the fight. It basically depletes the energy of the fight. Usyk continues to pour it on. Daniel Dubois mentally checks out, eventually takes a knee, and that's it. And he called it a day. And then dealing with this, a former sparring partner who is undefeated, a heavy-handed, a heavy favorite to win this fight over Dubois. How was the mental going to be playing? What kind of role was it going to play for Daniel Dubois? And he answered it beautifully. And now he is basically in line with a potential Wembley showdown against fellow countryman Anthony Joshua. And in line to face one of the big dogs, should they still be around, either a rematch with Usyk or a big showdown with Tyson Fury, which is more unlikely, but a big showdown for an IBF title against Anthony Joshua would be the would be the likely scenario, Dubois and Anthony Joshua. And then the main event, Zhilei Zhang, Big Bang Zhang, Chinese Power versus Alabama Power. We knew that Deontay Wilder fought as a one-trick pony back in December, where we just saw him a completely diminished, deteriorated version, older version, where many people were saying that what version of Deontay Wilder were we going to see last night? December, we saw a diminished version of Deontay Wilder and an old Deontay Wilder. So yesterday, leading into yesterday's fight, that was the narrative. Are we going to see Deontay Wilder of old, or are we going to see an old Deontay Wilder similar to what we saw in December, where he just basically survived the entire fight, got outboxed, outpunched, outworked by Joseph Parker, and a stoppage was in the works, but Parker wasn't able to do so. Parker then went on to beat Zhilei Zhang, and both of these guys at crossroads in their career, more so Deontay Wilder than Zhang, because of their styles, because of the damage that they have incurred. Zhang usually gets the wrong end of a decision, or at least fights to where he loses a decision, whereas Deontay Wilder has been stopped several times now, has accumulated a lot of damage, and he did so again yesterday. This was a fight where speed was going to be able to get him out of there. We knew that he doesn't have the boxing pedigree to be able to outbox Zhilei Zhang, but he was going to be able to take him into deep waters should he survive and take Zhilei Zhang into deep waters into the later rounds of the fight, where his chances were going to improve into landing that big missile right hand that he possesses. He landed it several times, and it definitely marked up Zhilei Zhang, but he's got such a great chin, and backed up by fast hands and good combinations, where Zhilei Zhang was able to pour on the damage on Deontay Wilder several times throughout the fight, leading to the eventual stoppage, where he ends up hitting Deontay Wilder so hard that he ends up spinning him. Deontay Wilder looks to his right, over his right shoulder, sees the referee, doesn't see Zhang coming from the other angle, and delivers the knockout blow that lands him on his back, staring at the stars. By the time that he does answer the 8 count, gets on his feet, and the referee waves the fight off, deeming that he was not in any condition to continue. He gets the 4th defeat of his career. Deontay Wilder, 43-4 with the 1 draw. Zhang improves to 27-2 with 1 draw himself. The fight is called off in the 5th round. Zhang moves on to a potential rematch with Joseph Parker, or maybe just sits around and waits to see what's next for him, where he's already bested Joe Joyce. Maybe a rematch with Joseph Parker, maybe a rematch with Filip Hrgovic, maybe the winner of Andy Ruiz, Gerald Miller, that's coming up in August. Maybe even Daniel Dubois, who was on the card and we just finished talking about him before, and maybe like a playoff to see who gets Anthony Joshua. But Zhang delivers. Big Bang Zhang with another knockout victory and potentially stops the career, brings the career of Deontay Wilder to an end. And if so, then we got to be grateful for the memories that Deontay Wilder left us with that big missile right hand that he was able to deliver like a piston-like right hand that he would deliver time and again throughout his career. And if you look at his amazing record, 42 knockouts of his 43 wins. 1 decision win only. What an amazing record that is. So Deontay Wilder, it looks like he's going to be hanging him up. More than likely he will. A lot of posts definitely leaning that way and reporting that way. And we just have to wait and see. As of the recording of this recording, I don't know yet whether he has called it or not. More than likely later this week it will be announced. But if it is a career, then congratulations.